Hello and welcome back to today's American Flyer Trains. We're on the bench, at least temporarily before we go to the track stand and the railhead, with a 343 080 Diecast nickel plate road American Flyer lines switcher from 1957. It is customer owned. It is a Type 3 according to Doyle because it has a 2-position reverse unit in the boiler. Prior to this, on other types, it could have been a 4-position here or a 4-position in the tender. I also want to share the symptoms that this train had when it arrived. The headlight and the light in the tender were both operative. The reverse unit would cycle, but the motor would not react whatsoever. So no armature, no field spinning. Even with a physical spin with my finger, I couldn't get it started. So it was going to need, I thought, a complete rebuild so that we could diagnose the problem and focus down on the solution. I chose to completely disassemble it. Everything was stripped on the interior down to the smallest pieces. If you want to see what that would look like, of course you can go look at the 343 in the factory service manual as to how far you can get these stripped down, but it's pretty far. I found a couple of things that needed to be done. I replaced the brushes, one of which was, both of them were too short. One was even shorter than short. It was way too short. Both of the brush springs were compressed. And by that I mean that if you took a spring and simply pushed it down as tight as it would go and hoped that it held that position rather than springing back to its larger size, that's the way they were. They could not have been applying any tension whatsoever to the back of the brush. I also relocated the brush contact point, the little cap that fits on top of the spring, and placed those back in. Everything else went through the rebuild that you see me do many times. That is complete stripping down, removing excess grease, oil, carbon dust, of which there was plenty, including around the reverse unit. Removed everything. The chassis was not in bad shape. I simply cleaned it very thoroughly and made sure that the bushings were lubricated. The side linkages, same thing. But everything was attended to, including the armature and the field and the commutator, and its slots were thoroughly cleaned. I also ground the drum commutator just a little bit to make sure that we're starting out at ground zero. The owner also wanted me to put a new red plastic smokestack insert, which I did. And I want to tell you what happened there. Apparently the smoke unit does not have any threads any longer for the red plastic smoke filter, red plastic smoke insert. It shows it in the factory service. It's too large and there's no threads. Therefore, the red plastic filter slid through, just dropped straight down. And of course it wouldn't hold, turn the train over, fall out. So all I did was wrap the base of a new red plastic smoke insert with plumber's tape, something I find is very useful for reestablishing the threads on a screw sometimes. So I wrapped only the part that had the threads on the red plastic. Then I inserted it back, used a screwdriver, which you normally do, to twist those back in, and it held just fine. Now there was one problem, and that is the red plastic insert was too far beneath the smokestack to be reached by a Gilbert smoke funnel, which is, I'm going to cover up part of this, it's about that long. But once you inserted it, it still wasn't long enough for the end of the metal part of the funnel to reach the top of that stack. And I absolutely refused to put smoke fluid in these motors and even risk a very corrosive material, from reaching any components. So I had to figure out a way to get the funnel to reach all the way down. Well, all I did was take a 14 gauge wire, strip it, pull off a section of the rubber or plastic insulation, and it was almost a perfect size to fit the end of one of these funnels. Now I did take a number 11 X-Acto blade and cleaned out the end of that piece of insulation just a little bit. But then I was able to wiggle this thing on, and hence what I have is the funnel with the extension. Now you can take the extension off, of course, you just pop it off, and this is mine, I'm gonna keep it. But now it reaches all the way down to and inserts inside of the red plastic liner. So I have more confidence. Now I'm gonna send one to the owner because I know he said he already has a funnel, but I just gave him an extra piece of stripping off of that 14 gauge wire. Seems to work perfect. I've already put like 10 drops of fluid in here because the smoke unit is warming up. I think it's ready to go. I could not find anything wrong with this from the back of the tender all the way to the front of the boiler, although I will point out one thing. This headlight, I was able to confirm, has its ground through the body of the locomotive. If you let the power wire on the back of this boiler front touch the boiler, you get an immediate short. So be careful. Make sure that when you insert this back on, and this one's pretty doggone steady and sturdy, that you have bent that connection to the base of the bulb socket up and out of the way. Don't let it get anywhere close to the edge, and that's probably true is down here, and I tested this one. The contact points on the side of this motor are either dangerously or touching the side of this locomotive. In other words, another contact possibility. So I noticed it looked like at the factory 2 pieces of insulating tape, one on each side of the boiler, had been inserted and installed to keep the contact points from either side of the motor, those contact points being the brush holder, from touching the side of the metal locomotive. Now, everything else being said, I could not find anything wrong. I checked everything. So I knew it boiled down to one thing, and that was the reverse unit. This time I decided to rebuild it, to completely disassemble it, leveraging the experience I had and some knowledge of how those were put together on a previous train, and use it on this one. And of course, this is another one. This is not the one from this train. It's fairly simple to do. It's got only 3 solder contact points. Take some, use some photography. Photograph the back of it to make sure you can get it back to where it goes. Disable those 3, and it's just about ready to come out. Then what you have to be careful with are these leads off the solenoid. Make sure they're protected. Now this one had some issues. These leads coming off the solenoid were too short, so I had to extend them for other reasons. Won't even go into that. But I protected this one because I went ahead and disabled their contact point so that I would not have anything on the end of these single threaded wires that comes out of the wind on the solenoid that would risk it breaking further up near this point. Although it's not impossible to extend the wire out, it's just something I didn't want to do. I'd rather leverage this coated wiring than have to extend it out like I did here. So I went ahead and disabled on this one these 2 contact points. So basically when I pulled it out, I was looking at something just like this. Now they say don't ever do anything on live television. Always film it first. But I'm going to demonstrate how easy it is to get these apart. And I'm going to choose the back, although you can use front or back. And I'm going to use my snap ring pliers, as spreader pliers. And I'm simply going to spread the frame of the reverse unit just enough, look at that, so that it falls out. Because tabs, slots are fine, they're metal. The tabs themselves on this one are fine, I think. Yeah, this has all 4 of its tabs. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the only thing that holds it together. Once you do that, you can get the plunger out and its little arm mechanism. You can clean the inside of the solenoid, and I recommend dry cleaning them. Never put lubrication in a solenoid. I dry clean it simply with Q-tips and isopropyl alcohol. I clean and polish the plunger because it needs good smooth operation. It doesn't need to be lubricated, but here's an opportunity to do that. Then, in order to separate this component, which has the fingers and what is the equivalent of the drum inside of it. It too is a pretty easy disassembly by using the snap ring pliers. On the back just a little bit. Come around here to the other side. Just a little bit of pressure. And it comes off. A little bit more with the snap ring pliers. I like going back and forth so it doesn't bend any of these and possibly fracture them. Almost ready to come apart. I'm just going back and forth, that's all. And eventually this thing should pop off. Like they say, don't ever do anything on live TV, but hey, what the heck. All right, and there you have it. You have both sides. All the contacts are exposed. The fingers are exposed. Matter of fact, there's one of the fingers right there. It just fell out. It just fits in a slot. That's all. And so what I did was I cleaned all these metal or brass contact points, including the fingers because I had access to them. Cleaned these, and I cleaned the rocker arm or the equivalent of the drum that rotates back and forth and exposes different contact points. I made sure these were cleaned and polished for maximum current. Now, getting this back together can be a bit of a challenge. It requires some patience. One of the things I did while I had it apart, not only I just noticed that, is that I cleaned the tips of the fingers right here, polished and cleaned them. And then when I was ready to reinsert it, I'm not going to do I guarantee I'm not going to do the reassembly on live television because that could take forever. But I want to show you what my secret is I go ahead and reassemble it with its two components, pressing the, oops, that finger's in backwards, isn't it? That will never work. Get the finger in the right way. So I push down on the fingers to retension them. Then I go ahead and reapply this backing like this and simply reapply it, leaving enough of a gap on this end that I can drop this in and keep shaking it until it falls in and attaches cleanly to these holes right here. There's one, there's the other one, and it is making contact with these two little dimples on this piece. If you try to hold all of this together and do it at the same time, it drove me crazy. And I like to never got it done, never. And it really was testing my patience. But when I went ahead and pre-assembled this and only had to work with two things, and make sure the fingers were still aligning and everything, it wasn't that difficult. Get it like this, leave a little bit of gap, excuse me, and then drop this contact rocker arm or drum in and keep shaking it around. Maybe move it around with a small pointed device or small tweezers till you get it in the right position, and then finish the squeezing process. Very easy. Now putting it back in is very easy because you're just going to apply a little bit of pressure to the sides of where the coil is until once again these tabs match up. Now what I did was I went ahead and spread it apart. I'm not going to try to do it right now. I spread it apart just enough to get it holding in place, and then I turned it over like this and I spread it some more and kept shaking it until it snapped right in at the contact points. Once I did that, got it all back in, rewired it, the train runs beautifully, both on the track stand and the rail head. So with all that being said, I think it's possible to reassemble and clean these two position reverse units. They don't require any lubrication. If you're going to do anything to these to improve the smoothness of the movement of this rocking panel or drum, is a tiny, tiny application of CRC 226. That's it. Don't put any kind of oil, grease, or anything else, because you want these contact points, all these brass contact points, to be clean.